Hello, I'm Grayson Ottaway. Welcome back. This is Marvelous Videos. Volthoom, the First Lantern. As a troop of green-clad intergalactic cops, it seems to reason that the Green Lantern Corps will battle a slew of monstrous opponents. The Hostile Corps, the Eerie Black Hand, and the Massive Relic have all fought the Corps at some point. However, one of their forgotten foes is similar to Watchmen's central character. Volthoom, the very first Lantern, who ultimately went insane, was strikingly identical to Dr. Manhattan in his goals and powers. The first failure of the Guardians isn't as popular as the enemy of Doomsday Clock, although he could be just as strong. In this video, we'll give you a peek at this DC villain whose terrifying skills might return to stalk the Green Lantern Corps. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to this channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, means a lot. Thank you. Now let's begin. Exploring the origins of Volthoom in comic books. Volthoom is commonly regarded as the very first Lantern. He is the multiverse's first entity to wield a power ring. He is the most formidable Lantern in existence, with nearly limitless strength. He is a foe of the whole Lantern Corps, as well as the Guardians of the Universe. Volthoom was conceived on Earth 15 in the multiverse, 1 millennium in the distant future of humanity. He and his mum were researchers who uncovered the emotional electromagnetic spectrum, which was a multiversal force fueled by every being's life in the multiverse. By utilizing this spectrum, Volthoom, with his mum, was able to develop the Travel Lantern, an experimental gadget that allowed its owner to travel throughout space and time. A nasty species of extraterrestrial invaders eventually arrived on Volthoom's natural planet and annihilated the civilization. Volthoom was instructed by his mother in the dying hours of his planet to seize the Travel Lantern and devise a method to save his people. Volthoom fled after his mum was crushed by a skyscraper. He spent weeks attempting to grasp the sophisticated apparatus, whilst being pushed into dangerous situations due to the irregular behavior that the Travel Lantern displayed. Volthoom traveled across space and time in search of a solution to his world's destruction. Scientists on Earth 17 employed the spectrum to revitalize plant life, but he didn't need this, so he went on. He went to Earth 47, where they harnessed the spectrum to produce excellent music. Volthoom struck a bargain with a magician named Mordru on Earth 3 to make a magic ring out of a fragment of his soul, but after a disagreement, Volthoom abandoned Mordru and Earth 3. This ring was renowned as the Ring of Volthoom, and it was utilized by the criminal Earth 3 Green Lantern, dubbed as the Power Ring. Volthoom eventually discovered what he was yearning for upon Earth 0, the multiverse's primary reality. Volthoom found the Malthusian race on the world Maltus in 10 billion BC. The Malthusians were a highly intelligent species who wanted to discover the mysteries of the spectrum. They intended to channel all of their impulses into a new battery known as the Great Heart, believing that abandoning their feelings would contribute to more significant discoveries. After successfully completing the ceremony, a power ring erupted from the Great Heart center. Volthoom donned the ring, which made him the multiverse's first Lantern. He established himself as a symbol of justice and authority in the Earth Zero world, inflicting punishment on offenders everywhere. Volthoom realized the ring held the key to saving his planet, but it had to be further honed. His chest was implanted with the Great Heart by the Malthusians, giving him unrestricted accessibility to the spectrum. Volthoom struck a bargain with the scientists that let him bring the ring back to his home planet and restore his world, but only if he assisted them in perfecting the spectrum technology. Ultimately, the spectrum started to damage Volthoom's mental health, resulting in his lunacy and a plot to murder the Malthusians. The Malthusians destroyed Volthoom's Travel Lantern to protect their innovations, keeping him in the Prime Earth reality. Volthoom was defeated by the 7 Proto-Green Lanterns. After slaughtering thousands of Malthusians in retaliation, the Great Heart was plucked from his body and the first power ring was snatched away. Shortly after this, the Guardians confined Volthoom in the Chamber of Shadows, which was a closed captivity, and erased him from their history. A group of Malthusian Guardians stayed behind to keep the First Lantern captive and were dubbed as the Hidden Ones. Volthoom's DNA was utilized by the Guardians to produce a swarm of contagious soldiers. This horde, known as the Third Army, nearly absorbed all rational life in the galaxy before being stopped by rogue Green Lantern core members. He enslaved the Guardians with a vengeance and then started draining energy from several wearers of power rings, using which he hoped to gather enough power to rebuild the entire world. Black, another supervillain, has a Black Lantern ring and meets Hal Jordan and Sinestro, a former Green Lantern turned supervillain. Hal Jordan and Sinestro are taken out during the fight and are confined in Volthoom's jail. After they bring their lantern rings to Earth, they urge anybody to help them liberate themselves from the terrible First Lantern, Volthoom. This is when Simon Baz becomes a Green Lantern too. After that, he assists the Green Lantern Corps in dealing with the Third Army. As the first issue of the Wrath of the First Lantern comic begins, Ganthet recalls seeing a Green Lantern band around the creator of the universe's hand 15 million years ago when there was a massive blast and Volthoom appeared. Simon Baz wakes up to find Blackhand poised to murder him and fights him off while wondering where Hal Jordan is. Volthoom kidnaps the Guardians and examines Ganthet's memories. He gets intrigued when he watches Sinestro become a Green Lantern and muses how much power he can extract from him. Simon Baz overcomes Blackhand and goes on to rescue the Guardians, but unfortunately, Blackhand wields his ring to imprison him with Hal Jordan and Sinestro. Volthoom discovers on Maltus that his captivity has diminished his power, since he is now incapable of completely modifying reality. Volthoom, unfortunately, has also learned about Hal Jordan and his companions, including Carol Ferris, Guy Gardner, John Stewart, Kyle Rayner, and Saint Walker, as well as his adversary, Atrocitus. Volthoom intends to reclaim his power and reconstruct the cosmos as he sees fit using their life energy. Sinestro explains that if Simon is inside the dead zone because of his interaction with Blackhand, the latter may have murdered him. Given that Simon's ring is still sparkling, Hal feels he is still alive. Sinestro attempts to steal the ring and almost murders Simon, but he draws his revolver and shoots him. Sinestro is unfazed by the shooting, since Tomar Ray, who is a prisoner, states that anybody with a strong enough will to live would survive. Nonetheless, Sinestro desires to gain the ring and confront the Guardians. It is then that he narrates to the captives the origin of Volthoom, while also revealing that the Manhunters were formed by the Guardians. In the meantime, BDG and the Guardians battle Blackhand in an attempt to bring Simon over to the world of the living. When the Guardians detain him, BDG manipulates the Black Ring with a beam. The Guardians begin to bring Simon back, but Simon refuses to let Hal Jordan be left alone, causing his power ring to produce another replica. Sinestro and Hal quarrel again about who deserves to go outside, but then Sinestro conjures up a picture of Carol Ferris, and Hal Jordan is sidetracked. Sinestro comes back, with Simon returning to Earth to inquire about Volthoom's whereabouts. Tomar Ray informs Hal Jordan that the sole method to leave this captivity is by becoming a Black Lantern, but Hal Jordan understands that he cannot properly use the Black Lantern ring because he is technically still alive, and wonders whether he may escape by somehow actually dying. Sinestro flees to his homeworld of Korugar, at which point he meets with his spouse, Arsona, and orders her to prepare for battle. Hal is still stranded within the dead zone and is considering jumping off a cliff to grab the Black Ring and face the First Lantern. It is then that Tomar Ray tries to persuade him, saying that the deceased have no say in questions of life and death. Volthoom enters unexpectedly and discovers Sinestro's inner distress. Infuriated, Volthoom and Sinestro fight, and Sinestro injures Volthoom. Volthoom reveals that he did not come for Sinestro, but for his planet, because Sinestro instills diverse emotions in his people. Volthoom destroys the planet, while Sinestro, bereaved by Volthoom's crimes, hovers among the remains of Korugar. He chooses to confront Volthoom one more time in order to reclaim his yellow battery. Tomar-Re and Hel watch the approach of the Korugarians and learn of Korugar's fate in the Dead Zone, although Sinestro is not with them. Hel ultimately leaps off the cliff, recognizing that they are out of time. Volthoom lands at the heart of the cosmos, where the Guardians await, and Hal Jordan turns into a Black Lantern. Volthoom intends to utilize the Green Lantern Corps central battery to strengthen himself, but the Green Lantern Corps, which consists of Carol Ferris, Guy Gardner, John Stewart, and Kilowog, arrive and fight. Hal has finally obtained the Black Ring inside the Dead Zone, and Black Hand's form falls to pieces. Tomar-Re questions Hal about how he plans to leave the hereafter, and Hal responds that he will enlist the assistance of his pals. Indigo 1 begins to harness the illumination of the Black Lantern on Nock, the Indigo tribe's home world. Volthoom blasts Atrocitus, as well as the Red Lantern Corps away, as they arrive to get vengeance on him. Kyle Rain, a White Lantern, is joined by the Blue Lanterns, as well as the Star Sapphires and Indigo Lantern Corps as reinforcements. Mogo is able to unleash a tremendous combined energy blast towards Volthoom, thanks to the United Lantern Forces. Volthoom is unaffected, but Sinestro crushes him using the yellow central battery right then and there. Sinestro, enraged, strikes Volthoom with all he has. Hal Jordan is released from prison by the Indigo Lanterns, and he emerges on the battlefield with an army of the dead. Regardless, Volthoom effortlessly tears through the lifeless army and approaches Hal, seeking the one moment in his life when he was completely overcome by anguish. Hal first assumes it is Parallax, but Volthoom discovers Hal's actual weakness, his father's death. Young Hal encounters Volthoom, who claims to be an angelic entity who can restore his father back with a single request from him. The kid agrees, tearful, and Volthoom exploits his misery to reclaim his full potential. Sinestro comes to the yellow central battery where he summons Parallax, who becomes his next host. Sinestro gains total control of Parallax, increasing his strength, but Volthoom informs Sinestro that only he is the very first Lantern and destroys him. Hal is now back in the Dead Zone. He encounters his father there, who tells him that he, as well as his mum, are very happy with all that he's done. Hal Jordan journeys to the grave of Necron, a Black Lantern Corps being, and frees him. Necron kills Volthoom with his scythe after Hal Jordan pulls the emotional spectrum from him. Satisfied with what he's seen, Hal Jordan pushes on past his parents' death, accepts his young self, and reclaims his status as a Green Lantern, as the Yellow Lantern Corps, as well as Sinestro, confront the Green Lanterns. In a climactic showdown, Hal Jordan and Sinestro disclose that Sinestro had slain each of the Guardians of the Universe, barring Ganthet, for being indirectly guilty of his planet's devastation and treason against the Corps. Then Sinestro decides to leave Oa, putting Hal as well as the Templar Guardians in charge of the Corps. Before they go, Hal confronts Sinestro with the question he was ready to ask while on Ismalt, which is whether they were ever genuinely friends. Sinestro, along with his Corps, leaves Oa, but not until he responds to Hal's query, saying that they'll be forever friends. Elsewhere, in the distant future, Taurus, who is the bookkeeper of Oa, relates the whole incident from the Book of Oa to Snow, the freshly trained Green Lantern Corps. Taurus assessed their fate by analysing their stories as given in the book, like Guy Gardner now being a veteran, willing to tell about his life in the past. John Stewart being voted into office as a state senator senator in the United States, Hal Jordan wedding Carol Ferris and raising a family, and Kyle Rayner now becoming healer for all the galaxy. And as for the rest of the Lantern Corps, Atrocitus as well as Larfleeze are unredeemable due to their fixation with vengeance and greed, which they latched onto, and their future was questionable. Iriki opts to discard her indigo ring in honor of Arbon Sur's empathy, while Saint Walker serves his family and the rest of the Blue Lantern Corps, giving them hope. According to Taurus, Sinestro sends Ganthet to reconnect with Sade after showing grief for their leaving, and convinces Larfleeze to conceal it from anybody, making his destiny immaterial. As he ended the tale, Taurus revealed to Snow how Hal Jordan is the finest Green Lantern of all time and the flame that ignited the eternal flame. But what finally happened to him? Thankfully enough, if you enjoy seeing a bad guy lead a vengeance expedition, Volthoom's actual narrative in Green Lantern's Rebirth tells us the story of Volthoom. In the first few issues of Rebirth, Volthoom got himself back in the world of the living a few years later, thanks to his direct link to the emotional spectrum, plus his incapacity to ever fully die. He then tricks Frank Leminski, a former pilot who aspired to be a Green Lantern, but was turned down by a green power ring, into locating and stealing the Phantom Ring off Green Lanterns Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz. Volthoom knocks out the Guardian named Rami and quickly flees with Frank, who has obtained the Phantom Ring. Volthoom awakens Rami and greets him like an old friend. He accuses Rami of transforming him into the creature he is today, stating that he wished to return to his origins, but was instead exploited by the Guardians during their experimentation with the emotional spectrum. Volthoom accuses Rami and the Guardians of the universe of lacking knowledge, alleging how, without him, the Guardians could not have been capable of tapping into the emotional spectrum and creating the Green Lanterns. Once the Green Lanterns are successful in rescuing Frank Leminski from the Phantom Ring, Rami appears and announces that he was able to confine Volthoom's essence within an orb. Volthoom, on the other hand, bound Rami's spirit inside the orb before inhabiting the latter's body. Volthoom says, through Rami's body, that he will instruct Simon, as well as Jessica, and states that the Earth is in excellent hands. Rami found in his writings that it was Volthoom alone who would demolish his homeworld on Earth 15. When Rami informed Volthoom of this, he concluded that Rami desired his ring. Rami smashed the travel lantern when Volthoom was on a killing rampage to stop him from going to his realm and ruining his home world. Rami then forged the first Green Lantern bands from the ashes of the travel lantern. What will happen when Volthoom stars in another DC show or comic next is just about anyone's guess, and we bet everyone, just like us, is eagerly waiting to find out. What makes Volthoom such a powerful entity? Volthoom can access all the hues of the emotional spectrum at once, giving him total control over it. He was imprisoned because this power was thought to be too strong. He shattered reality's foundation after his escape. He has the ability to read a person's emotions and discover the motivations behind them. He can also tell which of the 8 fundamental emotions a person is experiencing the strongest. Due to his attachment to the electromagnetic emotional spectrum, Volthoom has existed for 10 billion years. This bond prevents his death from being final. He was once consigned to the dead zone, but after a short while, he was brought back to the world of the living. Nearly all wounds are instantly healed by the first lantern. Atrocitus snapped his neck, but it merely returned to its original place after healing. Sinestro tore out Volthoom's heart, but he swiftly regenerated it again, and the wound in his chest was also mended. Volthoom can also change his body size at will. He often stands at the same height as a tall, fully grown man, although he occasionally gets considerably taller, creating energy constructs, force fields, projecting energy, projecting fear, flying, intangibility, phasing, precognition, psychokinesis, altering reality, self-maintenance, and teleportation are other skills he is adept in. The conclusion. Volthoom had been imprisoned for eons to come, attacked by the whole Lantern Corps, and momentarily transported to the Dead Zone. All of these obstacles, however, were ineffective because of his connections to the emotional spectrum, which made him immortal. He even picked up how to body jump, demonstrating the enduring nature of both evil and emotions. Since we now know that Volthoom is motivated by retaliation and pure rage, the Green Lantern's plot regarding Volthoom has only picked up steam, taking unexpected turns and rewriting its own past. Who knows what chapter of DC history his deeds will alter next. If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks for watching.